Hello and welcome. My name is Ibrahim Caplen. I'm editor of the Banker magazine. We're at the IMF annual meetings in Washington. I'm here with Ibrahim Dabdoub. He's the chief executive of the National Bank of Kuwait. Now, Ibrahim, over the last 12 months or so, you bought an Islamic bank, Bubiyan Bank. Tell us a little bit about what was the thinking behind that acquisition and how it's actually going forward now.
Well, Islamic banking is a trend that's really growing very fast in the Arab world, and not only really in the Arab world, but also in places like Indonesia and Malaysia and so on. So we thought that as a strategy of expansion, apart from the physical expansion of the bank, we would go into Islamic banking, and that's why we had the opportunity to acquire Bubiyan Bank, and this is a pure Islamic bank, very independent and very Islamic.
Okay, and how fast do you think you'll be able to grow that business now then?
Well, we have spent the last 12 months trying to set it up and come up with a structure, and you know, we have been hiring people and so on. So now we're ready really to expand, and we're considering places, for example, like Indonesia or Malaysia, really to go there, or some parts of the Arab world, like Egypt or the Gulf, because this is where the conventional bank, which is NBK, is there.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the Arab world there. I mean, over the last decades or so, you've expanded a lot into the rest of the Middle East, but it's a very troubled region at the moment. And I know you have operations in Lebanon, Egypt, Iraq and Jordan. How are you changing your approach to those operations in order to deal with the situation you have in the region?
Well, I mean, the strategy at the moment really is to wait and see how things develop, and we are fairly optimistic in the long term. Things cannot remain as they are. I mean, Iraq is a very rich country. Eventually it will stabilize and we will have the opportunity, but this may take some time. In other places like Egypt and like Jordan and like Lebanon, again, we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, we're concentrating more on the wholesale side of banking rather than retail. Our strategy now really is to go regional. And when I say regional, I mean the Gulf countries, because they are stable politically and they have of course, economic growth that will create a lot of opportunities for us, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE.
Okay, and how much room is there to grow in those countries, particularly like in Saudi Arabia?
Well, there is room. Of course, Saudi Arabia is fairly competitive because you have so many banks, but I think eventually and our culture and philosophy is relationship banking. Once you start creating relationship really with the big companies, with the big merchants and so on, I think you will be able to service them. Relationship banking is really something that is in Arabic we call it sihr. You know, it's very good, because in the Arab world, once you get close to people and you build the relationship, that's it, it lasts.
Okay. Now, it's interesting you mentioned relationships, because on the retail side, you've got a customer service program called IMNBK, which I think is to reward employees who go that extra mile with customers.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about how that works.
Well, it's an idea that the head of the retail banking came up with, and it's an idea that basically to reward the people at the bank, the staff, to really feel more into the bank, you know, the part of the bank or closer to the bank. So it's doing very well. It's a success.
Okay. Now, Harvard Business School came along and did some work and looked into the bank and published a report. I'm afraid I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but clearly it's a great honor to have that kind of attention from a top US academic institution.
Yeah.
What's behind their thinking, and what were their conclusions?
Well, basically, I hope that we heard that they'll be teaching it in the next semester. So basically, Harvard, I think, and you know, at the graduate level, they do case studies mainly. This is how the way they teach. So I think they thought that they don't have any cases from our part of the world. You know, they have cases, and I've gone into some education at Stanford and so on, and I've seen the kind of cases, typical American or Benihana or European or whatever. I think Harvard said, why not try and see the cases in the Arab world, for example.
Yes, I mean, it may be that they can learn something on that relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and they can teach the students the kind of cultural, the kind of culture behind the businesses there. So I think it's going to be very interesting. So they came and they spent some time with us, and they came up with a case study, and they asked, actually the group who were the leader of the group who was doing the study, asked me, she said, you know, how do you do it? I said, we have a formula called K&K. And she said, what's that? I said, K&K in Arabic means kafu khasi. Kafu khasi means good or bad.
Right.
And she said, what's that? I said, a customer is either good or bad, which means it's name lending and relationship banking.
Okay.
If the guy is good, even if he is so rich, if he's bad, he's bad. Okay. This is the very simple, primitive way, but it has been very successful. Okay. Very successful.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim, for sharing your thoughts with us.
You're most welcome.
I've been talking to Ibrahim Dabdoub, Chief Executive of National Bank of Kuwait, at the annual meeting of the IMF in Washington.